Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. This is our 2025 Commissioner Recruitment Info Session. I would like to welcome our presiding judge, Judge Tapia, to welcome us.
So good afternoon, everyone. It is my privilege to welcome you to our Court Commissioner Recruitment event. On behalf of the judges, staff, and the broader legal community that supports our court, I thank you for being here and for your interest in serving in one of the most vital roles in our judiciary. The Superior Court of Los Angeles County is the largest consolidated trial court in the nation. We handle more than 2.5 million filings each year, each one representing a life in transition, a dispute in need of resolution, a plea for fairness. That level of demand is only met through the work of a dedicated bench and especially through the work of our court commissioners. We are here today because our court, and in fact our democracy, needs principled, committed public servants, not just practitioners of the law, but stewards of justice. We are seeking individuals with integrity, discipline, patience, and wisdom. Leaders with a calling beyond themselves and a belief in the vital role public service plays in upholding both the rule of law and the trust of the people we serve. As a court commissioner, you are often the first and sometimes the only judicial officer a litigant will encounter. Whether presiding over a family matter, criminal arraignment, juvenile dependency hearing, probate issue, or traffic calendar, every decision you make as a commissioner carries real and lasting consequences. You are not simply applying the law, you are shaping how justice is experienced. You bring calm to conflict, clarity to confusion, and dignity to every voice in the courtroom. One of the highest responsibilities of this court is to ensure meaningful access to justice. That responsibility becomes more urgent in a county as vast, diverse, and complex as Los Angeles. Court commissioners play a vital role in meeting that challenge, expanding the court's capacity to hear cases timely and fairly, reducing backlog, improving responsiveness, and ensuring that due process is a right, not a privilege, regardless of a person's language, income, background, or representation status. In a time marked by public skepticism, polarization, and disinformation, the court must be a source of stability, fairness, and impartiality. And your work as a commissioner contributes directly to that. Every hearing you conduct, every ruling you issue, and every interaction you have with a litigant either builds or erodes the public's confidence in our legal system. Trust, my friends, is earned in small courtrooms every single day. That is the gravity and the opportunity of this role. You are not simply applying for a job here. You are answering a call to serve. It is a call captured powerfully by Justice Sandra Day O'Connor, who once said, quote, "The courts of this country should not be looked upon as a place where automatic justice is meted out. It should be an integral part of our system of government where fairness is not just a word, but a living reality." As a commissioner, you will embody that reality for individuals who may never again appear in court or speak to a judge or feel seen by a legal institution. For many, you will be justice. Let me also speak directly to those considering what this role means for their career. Becoming a court commissioner is not only an honor, it is an exceptional opportunity for professional development and public impact. This is an opportunity to refine your judgment, deepen your legal knowledge, write orders and rulings with consequence, and learn the craft of judging in real time. Many of our most respected judges began as commissioners. They found the experience not only a training ground, but a proving ground, a place to grow intellectually, lead responsibly, and serve visibly. And yes, as a commissioner, you will leave a legacy, one thoughtful, courageous decision at a time. So once again, welcome. We are truly grateful for your presence today, and even more for your willingness to explore a role that demands judicial temperament, ethical clarity, and a deep public commitment. I hope today's event gives you insight into what our court values, expects, and strives for, and how vital your potential contribution could be. Together, we will uphold the law, serve the public, and ensure that justice is not just a principle, but a lived experience. Thank you for being here.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Samantha Jessner. I am a judge on the Los Angeles Superior Court, and I am privileged and very proud to be the chair of the Commissioner Selection Committee, along with our co-chair, our vice chair. I always forget what your title is. I just think of you as a co-chair, Judge Annabelle Cortez, who you'll hear from in a moment. Judge Tapia's remarks were so powerful, and I kept trying to take notes, but I couldn't write them down quickly enough. So I'm going to try to, I'm not going to try to emulate because I wouldn't come close, but maybe talk to you a little bit about what I think are sort of the practical aspects of what it is to serve as a commissioner on this court. The committee comprises the two of us as well as 10 other judicial officers, two of whom are sitting right here in front of me, who are both now judges and were commissioners. So to the extent that you have questions, you should ask these two, not us. But I hope that what we can do for you today is provide a forum in which you can ask questions, give us your thoughts, and feel comfortable doing so. I was also fortunate enough to have served twice before on our court's Commissioner Selection Committee, and Judge Cortez served on the last one. We are a committee that is not afraid of hard work because we are going to work very hard between now and about October when we finally recommend to Judge Tapia a list of what is probably will be 25 to 30 commissioner candidates. Couple things that I know that I will be listening for and looking for as we go through what we hope to be many applications for a commissioner courtroom or commissioner position. One is a real appetite to join what I believe is the best court in the world. I'm a little biased for many reasons, but I do believe that what we hope somebody who joins this court can feel and can engender is the pride that one has in serving on the Los Angeles Superior Court as a judicial officer for so many reasons. The diversity of subject matter, the dynamic colleagues that you will have, the challenges that you will be presented with every single day, the way in which our court is perceived by others around the country and around the world, the opportunity to really make a difference. And I could go on and on and on. Another attribute that I know is important for any judicial officer anywhere is sort of a proven, a manifested intellectual curiosity. What we often say to judges and commissioners as we welcomed them to this court is, you're probably really great at what you're doing now and what you've been doing for the past 20, 30, fill in the blank years. We're going to have you do something entirely different in your assignment. And that's, I joke a bit about that, but that is 100% the reality. And really what we hope to see is people that are ready and eager for that intellectual challenge and that demonstrated curiosity about things and about people, which brings me to my next point. We often use sort of trite phrases. Well, I want to be a public servant. And I will say something trite, which is, we like to see people that have some dedication to public service. Well, what does that mean? We could go on and on about what that means. But what I will say is, as you think about your relationship, if you will, to public service. I want you to think about how different that view is from the bench and how exciting and invigorating and satisfying that can be to come in every day and really, truly, your biggest obligation that day is to help somebody who comes before you who has a problem, to help somebody who comes before you perhaps on the worst day of their life, to help somebody who comes before you to turn around whatever it is that is going on in their life or that went on a particular day into something positive and into a direction that hopefully is more productive for them. And that brings me to my next point, compassion and empathy. And as I said, a real curiosity for humankind, a curiosity into the human condition. Because as commissioners every day, as Judge Tapia said, you will be dealing with people who likely that will be their only time ever having any contact or relationship with a judicial officer. And that's a big responsibility, right? If you're getting people who are coming in not the most ideal circumstances to somehow be able to do what you do as a judicial officer, as a commissioner, and have them walk out an inch taller perhaps, and with more clarity as to what they need to do and where they can go from here. The next thing I always say to persons that are interested in being a judge or a commissioner is this: you have the best seat in the house, all right? You come in every day, people come to you, you help them tell you their story, and you figure out what the issue is, and then you figure out what it is that you have the power and the responsibility to do in that legal environment. And it frankly, I'm in a trial about pouring concrete, so I don't totally believe my next statement right now, but it never gets old. Pouring concrete, week 4 is old, but that's okay, it'll end. Every day I try to find something interesting about this. But you really do have the best seat in the house, and it is such a privilege to do so. And finally, what I will say is I hope that you can manifest a depth of ambition to do what is right. Judge Tapia talked about sort of a purpose beyond yourself. And this is just sort of a riff on that. It is ambition beyond, well, what is this? What is the next step? I'm going to become a commissioner, and then I'm going to become a judge or whatever. What we want to see is people who are interested, dedicated, have a passion for doing what is right and thinking beyond what that day or what that position is going to do for them. And I hope that as you move forward through this process, filling out a commissioner application, given that it is almost the same as a judicial application, is like taking on a part-time job, okay? It is. We ask for a lot, and there is a reason. We want to make sure that we are attracting and ultimately hiring the best candidates for what is a very important position. But I hope what you can do as you fill out that application is engage in an exploration of yourself, and ask yourself, after engaging in that exploration, what it is you have to offer the Los Angeles Superior Court. And let me tell you, we are eager to hear, and we are eager to read. So thank you for this opportunity, and I hope you all ask lots of questions. Judge Cortez.
I'm going to add a couple of points sitting down. I think the three of us have mentioned service and how being a commissioner is a position of service. And the last point that Judge Jessner made was to do some real self-reflection. So I would start off with the application, the job posting, so you know what's required in terms of the professional ability, legal experience, et cetera. Once you get through that, you do need to do some self-reflection about what the position means and what you have to offer to that position, right? So as you go through the application process. Also, I would suggest that you make sure you prepare thoroughly for the whole process, right? Little things as in checking for typos, making sure that your story comes through. The other thing is, make sure that your application reflects you, not somebody else or not who you think we want to see, but rather who you are as a person, what you can bring to the bench, and what you can offer in terms of that position of service. The other thing is, and this is the not so glorious type, it's the best job in the world, right? I say it every day. I was just saying it to Judge Zeidler that I absolutely love my job and I consider it a position of service. But you should also know that it's a lot of work, right? It's a lot of work. So your work ethic has to be impeccable. You have to know how to multitask. You have to be willing to help your colleagues. You have to be willing to do hard work. It's a lot of work because you're working with service. You're serving the public. The other thing is, if you look at the application and the posting, that'll guide you about what the job entails, right? In terms of what a typical job looks like. If you look at the posting, it tells you generally what we're looking for. It tells you you could be placed in any discipline. So you have a background in dependency, in criminal, or in civil, or in probate. It doesn't mean you will end up in those disciplines. So you do have to be willing to just commit to serving the public, wherever the court's needs are. But again, I would start off with just really some reflection about why you want to do this, and let that authentic self come through in your application in terms of whatever you include and highlight. And also for your application, make sure it's substantive, right? So it's not about how many judges you have on your application, but rather people who can talk about you, the work you've done, how much of a hard worker you are, how, your intellectual ability, et cetera. Make sure the references, et cetera, are substantive. So that way, whoever we reach out to is somebody that can actually, somebody that knows you. That's all I have. And I would also encourage you to ask questions. This is going to be an open forum. Whatever's on your mind, we do have some questions already, but I would encourage you to ask questions. This is the time to raise those.
All right, so next we're going to talk about the application process. So here on the screen I have the bulletin. Can you all hear me okay?
Okay. Introduce Nancy.
Okay.
Oh,
Hi, I'm Nancy Griffin. I'm the Chief HR Officer.
this woman in a blue blazer comes up, some anonymous woman. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Okay, so again, I'm Ashley Patterson. I will be your point of contact throughout the recruitment process, and I wanted to just highlight some things on the application to begin with. So here on the screen is the bulletin. That QR code will also take you to the bulletin, and you can also find it at lacourt.org/jobs. What I wanted to point out are the requirements that are listed on the bulletin. So by July 15th, you must have been a member of the state bar and 10 years of experience practicing law in California. We have received a lot of questions about the 10 years, so it has to be by July 15th, the closing of the bulletin. You must be a California resident, so make sure you have that address on your application, and then a U.S. citizen. The application will ask you all of those things. Then next is very important. These are the required attachments on the bulletin. So the bulletin will not let you go forward without attaching these things, so just be sure to open up your documents prior to make sure you're attaching the correct items. So the first is proof of state bar admission, California State Bar with the year status, your legal writing sample not to exceed 10 pages, your resume, a high resolution photo or headshot, a brief biographical statement, not to exceed 200 words, and then 15 total references. So for the references, you can have 5 professional, and then for the remaining 10, it must be a list of 10 judges or lawyers that can speak to your work experience. Next, I wanted to talk about once HR screens your application for the minimum requirements, this is now what happens with the procedure that the committee will go through. So we will send all qualified applications to the committee for review. The committee will identify the most qualified applicants. Teams of 2 judges will interview a specified number of applicants deemed the most qualified. From there, the full committee will interview a specified number of applicants and a final interview as a group. As the court, and they'll create the eligible list from there. As the court needs to fill vacancies, they will refer back to that list that the committee has deemed the most qualified and from the eligible list. That list will then be distributed amongst judges for voting. The judges will vote from that list, and from there, that is how the vacancies are filled. And then each commissioner-elect must go through a background check. Okay, we will now open it up for questions. We will have a mic going around, and we will, if you have a question, just raise your hand. Any questions?
Thank you. Thank you for everything you're doing. How do you decide where the vacancy is for a particular court commissioner who is selected?
I guess I should answer that. Just Judge Tapia, you want to come back up here? I recently finished my 2-year term as presiding judge, so I'm very familiar with this. So all assignments for judges and commissioners are based upon the needs of the court. And the specifics of how we figure out where there is a need is very much data informed. We look at filings, we look at dispositions, we look at the workload in different departments across the county. We talk to supervising judges. We look at how long cases have been pending in a particular department or a particular part of the county. There are many, many, many different data points that we take into account in determining needs. Generally speaking, this is a discussion that the presiding judge and the assistant presiding judge engage in almost every day. So it's not like, oh, we just got a commissioner, what should we do? You have a plan, but I do think you bring up a very good point, which we tried to emphasize in the application, and you heard Judge Cortez mention. Where you are assigned will be entirely based upon the needs of the court. So if you come to us and say, well, I've been practicing probate for 35 years, and we say, okay, but you're going to be sitting in dependency here, and you say, but I live over here, we're going to say, remember the application, okay, where it says that your assignment is based upon the needs of the court. So you should really think deeply about that. I don't like to give unsolicited advice, but I'm pretty sure that no matter how many times you convey to people, hey, I know you were a DA, but you're going to be sitting in family, and their jaw drops, and it's 40 miles away or whatever. You really have to think deeply about going back to that intellectual curiosity, dedication to the needs of the court, interested in something beyond yourself, all those things, because you're not necessarily going to be doing something that you're used to doing, which frankly, for most new judges and commissioners, is greeted as a wonderful opportunity. As I often say, how many times in your professional life do you get an opportunity to just pivot with not a lot of consequence, right? So I think it's a good thing.
And may I just add that the court has a really robust training program, and there are a lot of resources to help you transition to new areas of law. So you'll have the support, but you should definitely go in knowing, and this is what we're talking about, reflecting about the application process, that you may be assigned and you will be assigned based on the needs of the court. So it may not be close to where you live or in the area that you want. That being said, the court also has a very transparent assignment process. So once you've been on the bench a while, there are opportunities to go somewhere else if you so elect, but that's also based on the needs of the court. But the court announces these are the openings, but that's not going to be in the beginning.
There was a question submitted about a typical day as a commissioner. Could you speak on that?
It's essentially, you do almost everything that a judge does, right? You're going to be handling a calendar, whether it's in dependency, family law, criminal. ruling on motions, hearing evidence. So it's everything you see your bench officer doing, or the bench officer doing, you will be doing, almost everything. The thing that you may not see, the things that you may not see is all the work that goes on behind the scene, right? So there's a lot of work that happens off the bench, not just in case preparation, but also sometimes helping your colleagues. So that's why I said it's hard work. It's hard work. So you have to be ready, willing, and able to commit to service and working hard. Again, it's a wonderful position. But there's a lot that we do behind the scenes. We can rule on motions, we can, I don't know what else you want to add. It's prepare for cases, right? It's a lot of work on the bench, but what you see on the bench is only a fraction of the work that's really on our plate as bench officers.
And I don't think that there is a real true distinction in answering that question between the typical day of a commissioner versus the typical day of a judge. You know, the powers, the responsibilities, what a commissioner can do are limited by statute. But generally speaking, in certain areas of the court, we have a lot of courtrooms that are staffed by commissioners. Dependency, family, you know, our child support courts, we call them 1058 courts, can only be staffed by commissioners. But the bottom line is everybody who is a judicial officer on the Los Angeles Superior Court is expected to take the bench every day and do whatever it is that's called, that they're called upon to do based upon that assignment. I always used to say when I was the presiding judge, there's no easy assignment as a judicial officer on the Los Angeles Superior Court. We are all very busy, and that has a lot to do with, you know, trends in filings and things like that. But, you know, I suppose what I'm trying to convey to you is we try very hard, and I think we're pretty good at this, not to distinguish necessarily between a judge and a commissioner. You know, the law does that a little bit for us because the powers of a commissioner are limited. But, you know, the commissioners serve on committees. Commissioners are very much part of the ethos and the fabric and the activity of what makes this court as great as it is.
I do want to add something. One thing that you should know is that your work as a commissioner or as a judge is done in person. We don't do telecommuting or virtual work at home. That does not exist. So you're expected to be in court during court hours. So just because you don't see the judge on the bench at 3 o'clock doesn't mean they're not in the back doing work. They are in the back doing work, right? So you should expect that you're going to be present during court hours and no virtual work. And so there is going to be, that's a shift, right? Because there's a lot more flexibility that you have as an attorney. But again, it's all based on our obligation to serve the public and to be there to serve the public in person.
Feel physically safe in your job?
Yes, absolutely. We have, the question was, do you feel physically safe in your job? We have also a very robust security team for the court. There's measures that are put in place to keep us safe. And when there are safety issues, we talk about, if this happens, what do you do? So there's clear communication, and I absolutely feel safe with my job. It doesn't mean that there aren't safety issues that come up, but in terms of how the court handles it and the support that the court has, I absolutely feel safe. There are systems in place to address safety for bench officers.
I'm sorry, for the CV, how far back do we go?
I would assume that you would cover your entire professional history. I did get asked what job I had when I was in high school, when I interviewed to be a judge 18 years ago. So I did have to go back to high school, actually. Ann Taylor, woo! The Limited, I can fold a sweater like nobody's business.
Over weekend in the event they want to get ahead of work for the next week.
So long as there are no protests, yes.
And let me just add that everything's electronic now, right? So now, it used to be that we used to go into the courthouse to read our reports, our hard copies over the weekend. Now you can do that, but you can also, you have access to your electronic court files.
Which I do think brings up another subject, which is not anything that we put in the application. You should have some facility with working in electronic files. We do not have paper files anymore in any discipline. So you will read your calendar and you will prepare for your calendar in an electronic, we call it a case management system. But if that's going to be difficult for you, you may want to think deeply about that before applying.
And again, there's support in terms of teaching you how to use the systems, but it is all electronic now.
Good afternoon, Alma Puente here. I've been practicing immigration law for 20 years, and so my question is, what would the panel say to those of us who have been practicing administrative law all of our professional career, and what possibility we have of getting assigned a commissioner position?
I think the court values diverse experiences, and I would reflect on your transferable skills and what skills you have that would transfer over to being a commissioner, your professional ability, curiosity for the law, your demeanor, your ability to uphold the court's mission, and again, tying it back to the court having a robust training and resources to help you transition to new areas of law. But the key is being able to be curious and say, yes, I can learn a new area of law. This is how I've done it before, and this is how I would do it this time. So just focusing on your transferable skills.
Really quick, there was a question submitted about ability to engage in a current private practice.
Once you're a commissioner, no. Right? No.
Correct.
Right.
A, you can't, and B, you won't have time.
So the other thing is, and that's, no, because you're a judicial officer, you're no longer an advocate. So you have to also know that once you become a commissioner or a judge, you're no longer an advocate, you're a neutral, impartial person assessing the evidence. So it means you're no longer an advocate.
And if you're at all familiar with other courts, some small courts actually do allow sort of a hybrid commissioner. You might be an attorney most of the time and then sit as a commissioner 2 days a week or 2 days a month or something like that. That is not the case in Los Angeles.
And it's not like being a temporary judge, right, where you can, but you do have to give up your practice and it will be solely being a bench officer.
I have a question. Once the list is generated, you said that there would be 25 to 30 people that would be then given to the presiding judge. How long does that list stay in effect, or does everyone on that list, are they guaranteed a position on the commissioner, as a commissioner? How does that work?
So it's a great question, because it's sort of a unique way of getting hired for a job, right? The list stays in effect for as long as we need it. So that, let me talk a little bit more specifically about that. We undertook to hire commissioners, which ultimately I was given a list in late October, early November of 2023 of, I believe, 30? Was that one 30? And we are all the way down to number 5, I think. So that was what, roughly 18 months, something like that, that we went through that list. And that's entirely determined by how often commissioner positions come open, either because people retire or they are appointed to be a judge. And we really moved quickly through that list. And then part of that local rule 1.9 has a very specific detail about when the list gets down to 2 or 3 people, that presiding judge can expire the list. So sometimes we've gone through the whole list. When I was presiding judge, I think I expired it when there were 2 or 3 left. But it really depends on what our demands are for filling commissioner vacancies, which I think you need to think deeply about that sort of limbo that is created as a result of being either number 1 on the list or number 24 on the list. And I think Sylvia every so often will call somebody who is up next and make sure that the person is still interested, because this could now be 2 years later, something like that. That could affect your practice or it couldn't. It really kind of depends. And then people just come off of that list as they are elected. I have never known a situation where the next person on the list was not elected.
It doesn't. Okay, I'm just not holding it right. So, of the 2 interviews, are either or both of them structured interviews, or are they both more of an open type of forum?
We have questions that we will ask every candidate. Will there be follow-up based upon your answers and some of the things in your application and some of the due diligence that we will do? Yes.
Hi, I've noticed when I've applied for county jobs before, you go through the application process and then they put you in bands, and then they choose from the first band, second band, third band. Is this process the same where you're ranked?
No.
Okay.
It's not, you're not ranked in bands. Ultimately, we will recommend to the presiding judge a ranked list, 1 through 25 or 30, it just depends. But there's no banding like you see in county government.
I have another question submitted. Approximately what percentage of decisions are rendered from the bench on the record versus written decision?
It depends on where you are. Most of them, I would imagine, is on the record, right?
And maybe the question means, how much do you take under submission or something like that? But, it is one of the reasons that it is so challenging and sometimes exhausting to be a judge is in the course of 3.5 hours in the morning, you will make more decisions than all of you combined. Okay? And that's our job. Judge Tapia and I always say to new judges, make a decision. That is the gift you are giving the people that come before you. These things don't get better with time, okay? No wine in here. That's later. But you will be expected every day to make a lot of decisions, and they are always, I guarantee you, always based on imperfect information. And so you need to think deeply about whether or not you're comfortable. You will never have as much information as you want for a lot of different reasons. Judges don't always get to know everything we want to know. But you're going to be expected to move through your calendar, make decisions so that you can go on to the next thing.
That's like an essential job function to be able to decide, right, a case. So it's part of what's needed and required.
And think about you as attorneys. It's always frustrating to get a judge who won't pull the trigger, right? You'd rather have the decision, even if it's not in your favor, so that you can then figure out your next step, right? The hemming and hawing judges are not our favorite, right? Yeah.
I have a question specific to the application. There's a question, I believe it's 32, that is in regards to trials, jury and bench trials. For the purposes of the question, does that include adjudications, juvenile adjudications?
Yes. Yes.
I think that gentleman had it,
I was just curious, when candidates go through the process and you compile the list, do candidates know where they're on the list, they're informed?
Yes.
Yes.
And that's good to help you wrap things up, right? If you're number 1, you know it's going to be coming up sooner than number 25.
Thank you. When you are called to serve, how much time do you have to wrap it up with your current position or practice before you actually begin?
We usually tell people take whatever time you need. Now, sometimes people really take advantage of that. But, you know, some people come in 2 weeks later, and some people have a practice that they need to wrap up, and they come, you know, 2 months later. It really depends on what your situation is. My advice to people was, hey, you're about to have a very steep learning curve, and you're about to start a job where you're going to work really hard. Take some time off before you join us.
I was just wondering, when you talked about the list and sometimes it expires when you still have 2 or 3 names on there, do you notify those people, and then what happens? Do they just get added to the next list? Do they get reshuffled? Do they have to reapply? Kind of what's that process?
Yes, we notify them, and if there is another commissioner solicitation, they would have to reapply.
And on that note, if you have applied before and you haven't gone through, it doesn't mean you shouldn't reapply, right? There's a lot of really well-qualified applicants, and the list, you know, it's only going to be 25 or 30. So a lot of really well-qualified people don't get on the list, or maybe get on the list but don't make the final cut. So it doesn't mean that you should not reapply if you previously applied.
For the list of references, there's a limit of 4 judges. Is that just for the personal references, or does that apply to the professional references as well?
So for the list of 10 judges or lawyers, no more than 4 are there. Are you asking about the list of 5?
Yeah. There's no limit on that?
Here's our, it's funny, we talked about this in preparation. We want to be able to talk to people who know your work and know you and are familiar with your integrity, your diligence, your dedication. You know, if you, you're not going to get sort of a leg up if all of your references are judges. Because, you know, yes, we see you. You know, if you sit in criminal, maybe you see that judge every day. But there's a lot we don't know about you. And so I would probably construe that as, what did we decide? 4 out of the 5 could be judges?
From the second list to 10?
Yeah. Well, it says 10 judges and lawyers, so, you know.
Focus on substance.
Yeah.
Right? And it doesn't, and then there's a whole section on the application about relevant trials. So that's different because that may have appeared before blank judge, right? So that's another way to get feedback from a particular judge. But focus on who knows you and who's able to say, yeah, you know, they were working after hours, they helped me with my case, whatever it is. Somebody who can talk about your work ethic, your ability, your integrity.
Somebody who's opposed you. You know, yes. I think you need to look at breadth and dynamism. You only work for judges. Well, they'll know your work, right? Yeah.
And is it LA Superior Court judges, or is it any kind of judge?
Any kind of judge.
Thank you.
But what Judge Jessner was saying about opposing counsel, that's really important, right? So what is opposing counsel going to say about you when you had a really difficult trial? Were you professional? How was your demeanor, or were you not?
Hi, thank you. I'm curious, can you talk a little bit about what's expected in the writing sample?
Something that is free of typos. You'd be surprised how many times I read writing samples that have typos in them. So reread your writing sample. But, you know, it's got to be something that exhibits your facility with writing. I don't know that there's a bigger or a different expectation than that. You know, some brief, you know, I don't know, what's a motion in criminal that everybody just pulls off of the server, right? Yeah, right. But it's gotta be yours. It needs to be your voice, and it needs to manifest, how well you write.
This is a question about technology. How do we access the application online? And there's those two young ladies that are supposed to be our contact person. I'm sitting back here. I can't even see your name. Is there can we get your card or write
Yes.
down your name, or can you?
Yes, any questions can be sent to Commissioner Recruitment at lacourt.org. Again, that's just Commissioner Recruitment at lacourt.org. I'm going to go back to the posting, but this QR code is also a link to the posting. So for the actual posting, you can go to lacourt.org/jobs. It's right there at the top, and that's the QR code again also. Again, that's lacourt.org/jobs.
Yeah, come up here after, and we'll write it down for you.
Did you have a question right here? Okay.
Good afternoon. My name is Osman Taher, and thank you for the information. My question is, I personally would like to seek permission from judges that I plan on listing as references. I know that there is a requirement that we stay clear of contacting judges to seek support. So how do we stay clear of that?
You can contact them to ask if you can write them down as a reference. What we are trying to do is stay away from lobbying, from campaigning, right? But asking, hey, can I put you down as a reference is fine.
Understood. Thank you.
Yeah, unless, well, they don't even know who's doing it. Yeah.
Thank you for today. As to the biographical statement, it's 200 words, it's relatively short, but it's asking about your background and everything on your resume. Can you narrow down a little bit more on how we should tailor that 200 words?
Well, that's your challenge, isn't it? Yeah. It's a very difficult question to answer. Look, it's like a tweet, right? You should be able to think about what your elevator speech is. If somebody got on the elevator with you and said, "Who are you and what do you do?" Well, I'm so-and-so. I've been a member of the Public Defender's Office for 25 years. I specialize in sex crimes. I'm also interested in, pet rescue on the weekends. There you go.
And on that last point, when you do your self-assessment about who you are, also include your interests, right? Because it's not just what you're doing professionally, but also if there's any community involvement or special interest that you have, you should include them in there.
Back to the writing sample question, do you have a preference between P's and A's and drafting declarations for clients, because in family law, P's and A's aren't necessary?
No. I mean, again, we want, it is a measure of your ability to write and to articulate and to know how to cite law, etc. And don't give us anything that's confidential. You said family law and a declaration, and I was like, well.
So if you're in dependency, you have to just make sure you don't provide confidential information, right? So you have to figure out what that looks like for you in terms of what you submit.
Well, if you're giving us something that is confidential, then you're going to have to submit it in a way that it does not disclose confidential information.
Now, is there a preference that I submit something more neutral or something from an advocacy piece? Or is it really just, this is the thing I'm most proud of that I've written since having a law license? Because those are actually two different things for me.
You're not writing a bunch of advocacy as a judge, right? Go ahead.
I would just say whatever document you're most proud of in terms of the way it's written, your citations, et cetera.
Hello, thank you all for your time today. I had a quick question. As far as breadth of experience, you know, we have 10 years as a starting point, but 10 years is a blink of an eye. So as a committee, what do you guys look for? What's a sweet spot? 10, 15, 20, 25? What is something that in your experience you guys have sought or kind of used as a reference point?
I don't think there is one. I mean, it depends on what you've done in your 10 years versus your 45 years. Who you are, what you've accomplished, what you stand for. All right.
Okay, so again, you can contact us at commissionerrecruitment@lacourt.org. Feel free to send any questions there, and we will get back to you as soon as possible. Thank you, everyone, for coming out.
Thank you for your time.
Yes.
Thank you.